again, it's funny. People say, why are you taking away all the operations fund?
All right, I'll call the Charlottesville Albemarle Metropolitan Planning Organization to order for our special Friday, March 2026, 3 p.m. meeting. And I guess we'll do, is there going to be a roll call, Christine?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not used to where everybody's sitting. MPO, you get used to where everybody's. So we can do the roll call.
Supervisor Galloway,
Present.
Vice Chair Ocean,
Present.
Supervisor Malley,
Here.
Councilor Fletcher,
Here.
Mr. Nelson,
Present.
Ms. Landry,
Present.
Ms. Jacobs,
Present.
Mr. Rucker, Mr. Carney, Mr. Hubert,
Here online.
Mr. Hudson, Ms. Monteith,
Here.
Mr. Murphy, Mr. FC,
Representing.
Mr. Williams,
All set? So just a quick, this room, the speakers are in the ceiling. So as you speak, it doesn't help with amplification in the room, but for those online and for the recording, that's where we gotta just make sure we're using a loud voice, enunciate, etc. And if your head is up, it'll go into the speaker, but if you get caught here, it'll get a little problematic. So just want to mention that. And we have a special guest today joining us. How are you, Captain?
Very well, yourself?
Good. We were a question about, do we still refer to you as Captain?
We would do that. Darren works.
So welcome and thank you for joining us today. Any comments or anything you'd like to say at the start or just so we will first go to matters from the public. Is there anyone in attendance who would like to give public comment? Anybody online? All right, we will close public comment and move to review and acceptance of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to adopt?
Second.
Right, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? We also have the approval of the draft February 25th, 26th meeting minutes. Any changes or edits to those minutes? All right, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
All right, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Great, thank you. And now we're going to get right to what has brought us here today. And we are appreciate Mr. Nelson having this brainstorm and this idea. So looking forward to, because I hope this is the first event, because this is not something that we're going to solve today. We know that, but I think we get off to the first good step that's going to lead to the second good step. So, happy to hand things over to you, sir. Okay, so figure that all. Just square away.
I think we're going. So, welcome today. I think if I had known that this was going to end up in a meeting from 3 to 5 on a Friday during March Madness, I probably would have felt differently, but right. So today, like you indicated, is about the beginning of a conversation, what a recent strategy could look like. So we want to move toward viewing project applications, away from moving project applications from an isolated local effort toward viewing them as a synchronized regional portfolio. By having each entity here today to share their planned projects, it allows the MPO to understand those projects, to make an informed decision when offering a resolution of support, to also understand the synergy of how these projects work together regionally. This also allows Darrell Byers, our CTV member here, to hear a consistent message regarding the importance of these projects for the state form of quarantine. So I don't know if we've done this before. I would say that this is a good opportunity for those applicants to be before this body, kind of explain why those projects are important, how they fit into the overall picture of the region. So this all really started in my mind. I gave a presentation at Land Use Environmental Planning Committee meeting multiple times regarding the amount of work that is in this region right now. So kind of to understand why the strategy matters, we got to look at the competitive landscape that we've got and understand what is currently active and in the pipeline. Over the next 3 years, Albemarle and Charlottesville will have approximately 39 projects go to advertising exceeding over $300 million in value. The locals will be administering projects in excess of $100 million. That's a lot of work. This GIS graphic is just busy, right? But it gives them a representation of land use projects, construction projects, maintenance projects, utility projects, just in this region alone. It's a lot of work. We have come to the conclusion that on the operational side of things, we need to be coordinating better to make sure, one, we don't have conflicting work zones where somebody's got a lane closed on 29 and the adjacent roadway has a lane closed. So we're working together with county staff, city staff, the department staff, and other local partners, including the UVA, to figure out how we can come together to make sure those things don't happen. So that is a plus. So we also need to think about how the planning side and planning for capital projects in the future also play in that. So with this opportunity, we're looking at for this round of Smart Scale, round 7. We're not really disclosing how much work we're potentially going into the pipeline or providing details, but there's 23 projects being considered for Smart Scale round 7. 12 are within the PDC. And knowing that volume exists and what that competition may be, it helps us realize that we're competing for very limited resources. So kind of need to take a look at that. That's why a coordinated strategy can help ensure that we're not crowding ourselves, not submitting too many similar projects, but rather presenting a balanced approach of safety, mobility, accessibility priorities. And we must also have a reasonable expectation of how these projects will score and understand that there's limited amounts of funding and we really need to be intentional with the project that we're putting forward. So at the joint our MPO meeting, the joint meeting we had a couple of months ago, I talked about our menu of projects. This is where another strategy comes in. We really need to be intentional about those planning studies because those planning studies are the pipeline, right? So we need to identify locations strategically of where we feel work needs to happen and then build projects off of those. And we also need to be honest about the recommendations from a study and an application. So we don't spend a whole lot of time on concepts that will never have a viable path of funding. And during the last meeting, I was very candid about the 118 study. Like, it was half baked. There's no point of us continuing to move forward with that until we get better ideas moving. So, what have we learned from previous rounds of Smart Scale? I think history tells us, in particular with round 6, that the state almost exclusively funds projects that hit a VTrans priority 1 or 2 need. So any strategy that is developed for Smart Scale should be aligned with those identified needs. Part of the strategy should be our application should align with addressing the needs that have been identified in those priority 1 and 2 locations. We also need to be willing to have a serious conversation of the must-have project component versus the nice-to-have project component, because that helps prevent scope creep, which drives up the cost of these projects. And as you know, in Smart Scale, it's benefit over cost. So if you're adding these things to projects that don't really address the root concern, you're pricing yourself out of being competitive. Other regions, like the CBTA in Richmond and Stahl, they found success by aligning their regional data to match these state-defined sweet spots. And I've linked here some of the those actual plans that they've got. So what I will do next, kind of go over some of those. From the last slide, you saw that 14 of the 14 high priority projects all met the priority 1 needs, right? So in Richmond, the CBTA, the Richmond region, that is a funding authority. So they collect taxes and they fund transportation within their region. They allocate up to 35% of its own revenue for high cost regional projects. So they're using it to buy down the match on their project. They place a strong emphasis on consistent travel demand models and outputs to justify projects across multiple jurisdictions. So that's kind of similar to what we've got in our scenario analysis at this MPO. But as you can see in round 6, Stanton District and Richmond District kind of cleaned up on high priority projects. And that's kind of the focus of this group in the MPO. We're really targeting high priority projects, so we really need to be strategic in understanding which of those projects work well. So what does a strategy potentially look like? I think we don't really need to reinvent the wheel. I think our LRPP really provides a good, strong foundation for that. We can use that as almost like a strategic filter. The idea would be potentially as a locality identifies a need, it can be run through the LRPP's data model to see how it scores regionally based on the things that this region thinks are high priorities. And then the focus of that needs to be on location, not a specific treatment. Like we have to focus on where the locations are all the problem. This approach would allow the local priorities to be validated through the regional data and ensure that by the time a project is submitted for funding, its success is already supported by the metrics in the long-range plan. There's another key here with a strategy that could provide immediate value. Got typologies, right? So the state scores us differently depending on location. In the urban MPO area, which is area type B, reducing delay and increasing accessibility are major factors. However, our rural areas have successfully shifted to a type D, which that just happened this year, where safety is 40% of the score. A strategy could involve matching projects to the right scale. We wouldn't want to send a safety heavy project to the urban scale where it only gets 20% weight if we can avoid it. So again, we have to be really intentional with projects and who submits them. We also must acknowledge the reality that some local priorities, no matter how important they are to them, may not align well with the statewide funding program. When this happens, we have to be clear about what is driving the importance of those projects and acknowledge that localities will need to determine a funding strategy. Not everything fits in smart scale. And I think we just really need to understand that. And that's not to say that there's not other funding sources. What Sandy presented on this next slide kind of touches me. So a concept of what a strategy could look like in practice is maybe 3 buckets, right? You've got this bi-directional bucket, which includes where local needs roll up to the region for validation and regional data rolls back down to help the local planning. Bucket 1 could be for projects that hit statewide needs perfectly. Bucket 2 could be for regional collaboration projects. And bucket 3 could ensure that vital local projects like the Rio Road Peanut Roundabout, my favorite project, aren't lost. They just get directed to more appropriate funding sources like revenue sharing or federal safety grants, rather than being forced into smart scale where that process doesn't favor those types of projects. So this is kind of what identifying a project is a project. Start with the location, identify there's a need, and then let's collectively work together to determine what's the best funding source for that project. And it may not fit into anything at all. But I think us being just aware of that and not spending a whole bunch of time and energy and resources and trying to push a square peg through a round hole. So to wrap up, these are just suggestions. I am not trying to really provide much anything here except what it could look like. I think being proactive using the approved LRTP is the foundation of what we should be looking at. Like I said, today's not me directing the strategy, but offering what a shared framework could look like for us to work more efficiently together and fund projects that citizens care about. So I look forward to the presentation today from the localities and thoughts on some of these concepts that have been brought forth.
Yeah, I'd like to do just questions if you don't mind to clarify if we all understand that. So we'll go to the policy board first. So I'll have questions as provided.
So just with what you were just describing about state exit 118, which would it be? Because it's clearly a COSS. It wasn't done right in the 60s that we're all paying for it. So this is how do we locally have the responsibility to solve it to send it was paying something.
I think that it all depends on identifying what the need is. In fact, strategically address those needs. And it could be, Ned, I know we've had this conversation where we may need a big project, but I think we're going to have to look at how we phase that to get the bigger project. So it may not be one $200 million project. It may end up being 3 projects potentially to get that. And there are other funding sources potentially that could be used for that. There's IOEP funds that we have not evaluated. The issue with the 118 exit is the concern is not on the interstate. It's on 20 right there. So that's where it kind of gets a little fuzzy with the IOEP fund. So I think we really need to, with moving forward with the study and looking at additional metrics on 29, figuring out what are smaller utility projects that can be done to solve the critical issues that are there. I think with the Fontaine project, getting rid of the left to go westbound, that's going to solve one issue. We now just have to resolve the eastbound issue. And what that looks like, I don't know. Yeah.
You're right.
Yes.
Council pleasure.
Do you have, I think it does sound right to not just keep trying to shove everything into smart scale, and the opening up the doors to other more aligned funding sources seems like a no-brainer. That's great. But do you have any vision yet for how that process would unfold? Like, who would vet and say, you know, this is really better for, who would take responsibility for that?
I think it's a lot of people. I think between the MPO, between Culpeper District, between some of our folks and partners in central office to help with that. So if we get a list of projects based on those locations, we can identify whether they're priority 1, priority 2 needs. If they're not, then we can look at what other viable funding sources there could be.
Is there like
Almost
an
like a
expert on
report.
funding sources that would be like, that's a great, okay, yeah, okay, I understand. Thank you.
And that can be part, like when we do these planning studies, a whole lot of it's focused on smart scale. There's nothing to say we can't, as part of those studies, have a scope to identify potential other funding sources as we work through them. We just haven't.
Quick follow-up question to that. You said we get a list of projects. Where does that list start? Is it here? And if it's here, I feel like it usually gets presented to us after it's already a lit. Like, if I have an idea, it doesn't feel like this is the venue where it gets to you, then comes back to us. Is that me not understanding this committee, or is that not how it works?
I think it starts at the local level. It's like it rolls up potentially to the MPO regarding where it fits at in the LRTP, right? That's where it rolls up. And then there's a categorization of that, and then it rolls back down to the local. That's the way I see it. I don't think anything starts here. Nothing starts with this group.
I think it's about location. So
Yes.
always a defined project. In fact, it probably shouldn't be a defined project. It should be a location that then we would study. Whether the locality does that or whether VDOT supports that through STARS or pipeline or some other arterial management plan, something like that.
And we've got a lot, like I talked about at the joint meeting, this menu that we've got. I don't know if we've ever all sat there and looked at all the stuff that's on the books. Like, we've never had a work session to say, well, Dan, we paid all this money for a study and we had 12 recommendations. And guess what? None of them happen. They just kind of go sit somewhere on a bookshelf and done. How many studies have we done on 118 each other?
5 since I've been.
That's about the number of projects we've got. First big.
Well, I mean, there was two before the vision. And then we broke it down into 4 projects. And the left turn at Fontaine is the last of the 4 projects that we got funded. So we're starting to see the original stuff back.
Yeah.
Tie it back to what we do a bit. Sort of building off what Sean is saying and pointing to the LRTP is our starting point. We're not starting point. We actually have created need scores within our LRTP that define what we have already agreed to are our needs in the region. We can look to those and sort of pull from those to decide where we want to focus. We already have that we pulled together 2 years ago. Yeah. So we have a place to start with there. We also have a list of projects in the LRTP. So it's really about prioritizing those projects, the LRTP, and figuring out where the opportunity.
And those priorities don't align necessarily with smart scale. So I think we've got to get out of this mindset of it's just smart scale. It's a means to an end for certain projects. So the region could have prioritized, I mean, the LRTP may have a project that's ranked 30, if they're not ranked, but if it's like number 30. But guess what? That project may score very well in smart scale. That doesn't mean you don't go after it, but you have to have a strategy on what you're going to do with the 29 above it. And in the strategy, maybe we just don't have a funding. So, I mean, there's really limited revenue sharing, and there's these direct grants that go to the applicant. We don't have, like, the department, we don't have, I can't fund anything.
So what you just described, the district grant, is what you use, the district used to divide. Is that what's going on there?
I can't apply for a district grant project. Yeah.
I welcome Ben, Jessica, staff to ask questions as well for understanding. It's a little different than possible.
That I really appreciate breaking out the buckets as a way of framing this. I'm curious, I think you said smart scale for the big bucket that deals with those sort of statewide need issues, and then maybe revenue sharing or some other federal sources for the bucket number 3. I'm curious where you think we're getting money for bucket number 2, because that seems to be where we're having the hardest issue finding funding. So I think that really helps inform what our strategy is going to be if we're really going to try to figure out what's going on.
And that may be a bigger exploratory conversation.
Yeah.
Much more of those federal discretionary grants, builds,
And
streets and roads, like those types of funding sources.
and it's probably not a popular thing to say, but I came from a region where a locality, this was at the beginning of smart scale, had a bond referendum. And they cleaned up through revenue sharing and smart scale. And all the projects in that region right now that are built and being constructed all came from. So there's power in the locals trying to figure out a way to fund it themselves. It's just political will to get there.
And competing priorities for your local dollars.
Yeah.
And if you don't even want to get one on the state funding.
Oh, I know, we've heard it.
One I might have, might be good for the group, is V-Trans, since that is such a permanent factor. Maybe explain to the group a little bit about when is V-Trans updated and how the locals, or maybe how it's, what are the factors that drive the selection of the, primary and secondary projects in that? Maybe how the locals have jurisdictions have some influence in that process to affect how that, what gets identified as one or two priority.
So, Roger, let me see if I can. So the priority 1 route is the 1%, right? It's the top 1% identified based on the V-Trans method. Priority 2 is the top 5%, and priority 3 route is the top 15%, I believe. So, but the conversation happens at the CTB with me, right? So they have established what they feel are, and there was a presentation at the last board meeting on Tuesday that kind of went through all of this and explained it at the CTB. Those priority locations are nothing more than identifying where there are problems that based on certain metrics. Right? So is your question, when was the last time they looked at all the locations?
My question is, perhaps a little broader discussion and informative. I think that is it's a major source of what will these projects selecting. So that's the criteria for selecting these projects. I think it's good for people to understand what those criteria are and how they get picked and what the local jurisdictions, how can they influence what's being picked.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to see, and I think we'll see it during some of the presentations, how projects that we have selected align with priority one and priority two. I would like to think that the locations that have risen to the top as a need from a locality are on priority one and priority two, right? Because that's where we have indicated that there are metrics that show that we have the most problems. Now, if you're trying to be proactive, that's where I think the issue comes into play. Like if you can foresee an issue happening 10 to 20 years from now, and you're trying to be proactive to address it, I'm not sure if that aligns with the way the current system is set up. Is that fair, Chuck?
I guess my questions would be the piece where the localities are putting in for cost sharing, try to reduce costs. So the nuance here I'm hearing is that, for lack of a better word, niceties you're talking about. So if the locality, like let's say it's a $10 million project, it's got $1 million in niceties, we're paying $1 million for the niceties, but we still haven't moved the needle on the score because you're not even caring about the niceties. So the cost sharing is not going to the initial 10 million. So it's going to hurt us in the metric. So we need to actually bring down what you care about.
Yes.
And if we, and I don't know that we're doing this, I'm not suggesting that we're doing that staff. They may not, they might don't know. But I think sometimes it would be easy to trick yourself into thinking, oh, it's a $10 million project and it's got $1 million of multi-use paths, so it doesn't help the scoring. Well, we'll pay for that.
Bingo.
We haven't done shit though.
No.
Excuse me. We haven't done anything with the project to bring down the $10 million cost.
Facts.
We're just paying the extra.
You're paying for the.
And we're not getting scores or any brownie points for it.
Correct.
So what happens to these? Well, I guess that's a bigger question. So I'll just throw it out as the rhetorical. But you said we got to stop trying to fit square pegs in holes, because then it's like, well, what do we do with the square pegs? Because it's not like they need done. They need address.
I think we just have to be aware that it doesn't fit in the smart scale. So that's where we have to figure out, is there a way to then combine another project through another funding source to get it done?
Well, no, I got that. I just thought, like, I heard square pegs, round holes, meaning the round holes are all your funding mechanisms. And we still have square pegs that aren't fitting in
any of them. That part.
Then it's just, I guess the answer is it's just left up to the locality.
And in some regions, the transportation
Authority.
they're generating additional revenue. Other than this.
Yeah, this is an anecdote, and we'll get to the projects. I don't want to take up a lot of time on it. I had a town hall last night in my district for a budget. And one of the questions, how do you deal with the transportation stuff? And they mixed it in with growth. How do you get ahead of things and all of that? And I'm not going to get on my soapbox about the funding piece, but I tried to explain to them that when you get over $30 billion in smart scale application requests. And that's statewide. And then statewide, you have over $1 billion in locality match money coming, and the state only pays or approves or awards 80 billion. That's a third of what was submitted. And smart scale applications are not the fluff projects.
Yeah.
Those are because you're limited in how many. And since it's competitive, you're putting out your best, like the most critical ones. So if the state isn't even getting at a third of a limited group of needs and requiring that much local dollars to help get there, this captive buyer, you're the new set of ears that has to listen to me say, this isn't about carving the pot out big. This is about y'all's pot is not big enough. And to give the just point that the citizen asked, how do you work with the state to get the resources to get these projects done? And my first answer before all my other commentary was the whine and complain method. I mean, what else have I been doing for a year? But whining and complaining about transportation funding as it relates to transportation. And it's frustrating when you have a citizen ask, what are you doing? Now, I told them what we do to try to win projects so that we're ready to roll and try to do this. I appreciate this meeting today because it's about That's really what we're talking about doing here. Is, got it, this is the reality we live in, so let's play the best game we can in it. But that doesn't mean that we lose sight of the fact that we're just not doing our job in maintenance and road projects in the state. Point blank, in my opinion. Were there other questions about the initial? Yes.
I had a question about the smart scale scoring. We're in round 7 now, and there have been tweaks to the scoring throughout. Ned asked about, Mr. Galloway asked about the niceties and how sometimes those are locality priorities that seem to be must-haves, but the scoring doesn't give them benefits. What is the process to then have a locality be able to influence how it gets scored? Because if this is a process that will continue, it will need to evolve. Are there opportunities? Is there a process to influence how projects get scored?
There's an opportunity to influence the process for smart scale through the CTV and Secretary in order. That's where it's at. I think it also starts at, you have concerns, the spring public meetings, coming and speaking to those concerns where they are present. You've watched the CTV since the change in administration. I mean, Secretary Donahue is the brainchild behind smart scale to begin with, right? So I think he is very passionate about making it work the best for the state and trying to also capture those local needs. It's never going to be perfect, but I think if there was ever a time to start to talk about potential changes that the locals would like to see, it's now. It won't change for round 7. That ship has sailed, I believe. But I think for round 8 moving forward, now's the time. And it may be I don't know, maybe it's a different program. I have no idea.
Jessica, are you talking about how the smart scale scoring was changed to make it harder for like head stuff to score well and easier for larger car projects to score well? Is that?
I mean, that's one of the changes. Yeah, I'm thinking specifically about, to my knowledge, and I recognize, like, I don't know all the things about how smart scale is scored, but if you're converting an existing sidewalk to a shared use path, you don't get any extra benefits from that in the scoring. You do?
Do.
Okay,
They
I
measure
stand
bike
corrected.
and they measure pedestrian separately. So the pedestrian improvements, if you're adding bicycle improvements to the corridor, you will get additional points for that. But if it's already got sidewalk, pedestrian, by adding the shared use path, it may or may not change it. It's existing sidewalk and you're just replacing it.
Mhm.
But I think I know where your question's coming from. The part of the issue though depends on the broader network. You have to be connecting an entire network. So if you're making a shared use path and it doesn't connect to more shared use path, you won't necessarily get more benefits than if it's a sidewalk connecting to sidewalk. Like, it's looking at how you are completing a complete network.
Yeah, and I guess my question is, I would like to get points from that, because that's how we build things, is one segment at a time, and sometimes it doesn't always connect the whole way through.
Or that brought to the MPO policy board as an update of, hey, this is what's changing with smart scale in round 6. Potentially, do you have feedback to give to the CTP? So there is going to be that built-in discussion that happens as we go through the post-mortem of round 7, figure out what goes.
Gotcha.
I will say, having been on the tech committee, I didn't really feel like we had a whole lot that got heard by the administration, but that might be a difference. So I'm hoping with the administration, us getting that feedback well received. I guess we'll see how that works out.
And there's a new authorization bill coming up. We don't know what the new transportation authorization bill is gonna look like. I've heard that the direct grant potentially may be going away and they may be going back to a formula approach. So that's going to change the whole dynamics of how transportation funding moves forward. At this point, I have no idea what's going to end up in there.
So it's one thing, if you make everybody go, oh, how are we gonna figure out the method?
And then you change it.
Well, but it's also distracting you from going, well, the dollars haven't changed. It's the method to get changed. So now we're all focused over here. So I guess that's y'all's job's got to figure out the projects that are going to fit into the whole the best way, and then we got to figure out how to do the political game.
The third pillar is cost reduction. You know, how do we produce projects cheap?
Yeah. All right. Great. We move on to the next. We're going to hear about the projects now. I'm going to remain optimistic.
All right. Well, happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for being here. We certainly appreciate it. Yes. Oh, it's not sharing. Thank you. Let me do that. All right. Can you see it now, Sarah? Perfect. Thank you. All right. So today, you all will get some updated information about the projects that are under consideration in the region for submission for Smart Scale Round 7. You'll hear from myself. I'm Taylor Jenkins. I work at the MPO, Jessica Dimick with Albemarle County, and Ben Chambers from the City of Charlottesville. And so before we jump in, I will cover a little bit of just like foundational smart scale knowledge. Happy to take any questions about that before we jump into projects. And then all of the concepts that you'll see, all of the cost estimates, all of those are still preliminary. So those probably will change between now and if there's a full application submission. So I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone. All right, so the purpose of today is to, again, provide you all more information on the projects in the region that are being considered for smart scale funding. Staff are working on pre-applications and the deadline for those is April 1st. And so we're going to talk through smart scale funding, brief program overview, the projects, and then touch more on that future funding strategy development. So smart scale, as you all have already heard, is a really significant funding method for large scale transportation projects in the state. So it's administered by OIP under the Secretary of Transportation, and it funds 100% of project costs. So there's no match required, and smart scale fully funds projects. Localities and regional bodies are eligible for smart scale. We can each submit up to 4 applications each. And right now we're in the pre-application period, but there's also a full application period where the projects will be better fleshed out. You'll have more documentation to submit these projects for funding. And so the CTB selects these projects through a competitive scoring process. So first we have the pure recommendation from staff. So based on the evaluation metrics, they get a list that they then pass to the CTB, and the CTB at their discretion can ultimately determine what gets adopted into VDOT's 6-year improvement program. All right, so any project, before you can even submit for smart scale, any project first has to be identified in VTrans, the statewide transportation plan, to be eligible. So that's sort of the first hurdle that you have to cross to even get access to smart scale. Smart scale is made up of 2 funding programs. So there's a district grant program that is open to local governments only, and then the high priority projects program, which is open to regional bodies, transit agencies, and local governments. So district grant program is competitive within the district, and the high priority projects program is competitive statewide. Regional bodies, so the MPO is only eligible to submit projects that meet needs on a corridor of statewide significance, so the COSS, or on regional networks.
And additionally, projects that meet specific eligibility requirements for the high priority projects program. So like Sean touched on a little bit earlier, everything doesn't fit in Smart Scale, and additionally, everything doesn't fit for the MPO to submit. And so I took a screenshot from the Smart Scale technical guide. That's basically what tells us, here's everything that you need to know about applying for Smart Scale. We can only apply as the MPO for these very specific project types. And so roadway on new alignment, HOV, HOT lanes, transit facilities or high capacity transit, so like a bus rapid transit or heavy rail, for example, or rail improvements. So these really significant, almost capacity related projects are the ones that the MPO is now eligible to submit for. So in addition to the scoring methodology, project cost is also considered in project evaluation. Any project that's located in the MPO boundary is scored according to category B factor weighting. So not just the MPO's projects, but anything that falls within the MPO area is scored according to that. And so those scoring factors and their weights are up there on the screen in this table, where you can see that congestion mitigation and accessibility are the highest percentages of how our score is weighted when everything is tallied up.
And what does accessibility indicate in this?
Yes. So correct me if I'm wrong, it's accessibility to jobs, I believe.
There are actually different scoring weight factors. One is accessibility to jobs, the other one is accessibility to jobs for disadvantaged populations. The third is access to multimodal travel options and facilities. We get into the technical guide.
Thank you.
And I'll add that it doesn't really specify environmental quality does have a component that is influenced by bike ped. If adding those facilities, they basically convert it to less congestion and they convert that to a CO2 emissions reduction. And that's how they calculate what that environment, So there is another factor there that does, it's influenced by bike ped facilities. That's one of the reasons you look at all of our, most of our projects in the district, we do include those facilities just to get those.
And congestion mitigation also happens. Factor that's not included for that score. Okay, thanks.
But that balance comes with costs associated with it, right? That's the balancing part.
Yeah. And there's also a note on here. So another takeaway from round 6 overall. So for both district grant program and high priority project program, $18.6 million was the cost of the average funded project in round 6. For the high priority projects program, that average funded project cost was $27.2 million. So larger projects for that one.
Oh, sorry, I didn't think of this question when I reviewed these in advance. Is that the funding coming from the state, or is that the cost of the project, including any local contribution to the project?
Total project cost.
Okay, that's
right.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm actually not sure.
Okay.
It might be the smart scale portion. Because you have total cost and then you have a smart scale portion. The score is based on the smart scale portion. So any leverage funding really necessarily.
And one other note I will make on the scoring as well. One thing that I don't think is acknowledged very often is that all of these are relative scores as well. So every single round of Smart Scale, it basically depends on what's in the bucket for funding, what everybody is submitting, and every project is scored relative to the top scoring project. And so I think that's important to note here too.
For easy. Standing round.
It's over.
Right. Any other general Smart Scale questions before I pass it over to Ben to talk about the city's project? Okay.
So if you're on council, you have our presentation this week. There's one little adjustment to what you saw on Monday. This was a presentation I gave to council on our STAR study for the West Main intersection. It's the intersection of statute in the middle of it. You're trying to orient yourself a little bit. So I'll walk you through sort of background of how we got this study going, where we're headed with the study, and some additional study as we pull together the application. So this study started back in 2024 when we were working with VDOT to figure out where are we going to do the next batch of start studies. And in the city, we pointed to some places where we knew we had needs from the regional long-range transportation plan and safety bridge study that was underway. So we looked at the US 29 North and 255 past interchange within the city that was paired with the START study. And we looked at specifically within the city boundaries. It would be just a city project at West Main and Bridge. This was also identified as a location that was a priority because we had for a project here. We knew that this was a need that we had, but we knew that it was not a need that we had funded and back for funding for that project because it was a little too rich for our budget and didn't really do all the things that we needed it to do. And so when we were looking for a new project to do, we said, VDOT, you know, the place we want to focus because we have some needs. So next slide. So what are those needs? First, we knew we had safety needs there. There have been some fatalities and crashes there. So we knew we needed to address the safety needs for all the road users there. And I say all road users there because this is a very busy intersection. It has all kinds of road users. There are pedestrians crossing it every time that a pedestrian signal goes on. There's cars crossing it every time the vehicle signal goes on. And sometimes there's bikes mixed with them. We wanted to make sure that the traffic flow of all of these users was a little bit more coherent and easy for people to use. One of the biggest obstacles to that is we have a big statue pedestal in the middle of the intersection. It creates some issues with sight lines. It creates some issues with crossing distances for pedestrians. It's very confusing for bicyclists who are trying to weave across that turn lane that sort of breaks through the bike lane right there if you're going eastbound on West Main. So we knew we needed to deal with the pedestal, but we also spoke with our historic resources team and said, do we need to keep the pedestal? It seems like an important cultural resource. I know that we don't want to use it for the statue anymore, but maybe somebody else could use this place for a cultural celebration for something like Vinegar Hill, just the neighborhood where this intersection is. So we decided we wanted to make sure that we were maintaining some space. It may not be the pedestal itself. We may get rid of that thing and use it for something else. We made sure that there was some space here for a cultural component in the future to be defined later. And most critically was we wanted to make sure we could get money for it. We wanted to be able to set this up for a smart scale application. So we knew that we were going to have to show that there was some improvement to the operation, the intersection itself for vehicles, as well as the other vehicles. And when we were doing that, we also knew we needed to show it to be cost competitive. It's needed to be something that couldn't be a giant, $40 million project. So there is an intersection to be able to put more street. Next one. So back in November of 24, we started collecting traffic data. March of 25, we did a public survey about the conditions in the area. In April, we published the existing conditions findings for that. In August, we went out to the public with 3 alternatives. You'll see them up here. They're a little small. You can see what they are, but all of them included turning Water Street into one-way westbound. That frees up some turning movements and some signal timing so that we can get that intersection operating more safely and continuously. We didn't have to rely on showing up in conjunction like as much when we took out that leg of the intersection. So what that does is open up opportunities to add in bike facilities, better pedestrian facilities. You now have a whole lane there. We also looked at that intersection as a roundabout, because knowing that those can provide some efficiencies for intersections. But the space demands and cost drivers of buying the space that you need for a roundabout to be able to serve that on a traffic analysis we looked at. So we narrowed it down to one select alternative based on sort of the middle one right there. We'll go to the next slide. We took that to the public in January of 2025, towards the end of the month, or sorry, January 2026. That's all on that slide. And we took that preferred alternative to them and said, give us our feedback on this alternative right here. And we got a lot of feedback. Sandy, I think, got quite a few emails and very talks about this one. We had, folks downtown who said, I remember back in the day, we had streets downtown. It didn't work out so great for everybody. And, it's confusing to get downtown today. How is this going to make things less? We also had a lot of folks email in and say, this is great. I haven't had a way to get downtown before, and it's going to give me a safer connection to downtown. And, we had a lot of different feedback. We're going to be looking to sort of clarify that feedback as we refine this design. But the big components of this are, it is still a 5-leg intersection, but one of the legs is that one-way westbound on Water Street, with us putting a protected cycle track between Bridge McIntyre and Second Street Southeast. It's connected to protected cycle track and the westbound down the other side of the intersection. You'll notice sort of a little jog bike facility in the middle of the intersection for in front of that stop bar for the Water Street westbound. Routing it that way instead of giving it its own signal timing is what gives us that signal savings so that we can move the cars through this intersection. So benefits for all users that we saw going into this, and opportunities to make some new connections, right? It's specific. Next slide. Yeah, our project benefits, I kind of touched on this already. We're decreasing the delays, we're reducing some turning movements, so that reduces some conflict and increases safety. We're creating better spaces for pedestrians and cyclists. We're improving the turn visibility for West Main by removing statute. One of the things that you can't see from the top down is we're also going to be looking at wayfinding. Right now, if you're sitting on West Main looking eastbound, you'll see a brown sign that says hotel. That sign was put up before there was more than a hotel, and now there's about 5 that block that sign. So there are some updates to make sure people understand where they're going. We get a lot of feedback. If you get to that intersection, you don't know where the downtown is. That's something we've got to address when we make all these associated with this project. The one update that I have to this presentation that I didn't have on Monday is we have a cost estimate, or at least our initial cost estimate, which is about $11.5 million. Excellent. So our next steps, we are going to be doing an engagement with downtown residents. We got a lot of feedback from them, and we want to make sure that we're clarifying that. We got a lot of things like, hey, what's going to happen with deliveries? We're going to go back to them and say, well, what kind of deliveries? Where are you delivering from? Where are you picking up from? What are we specifically talking about? That might not change the overall design of this project, but it will help us make tweaks and also help us inform our later planning. On July 20th, we're planning on taking this project to City Council for the endorsement of their smart scale application for August. That'll get set throughout September, October, November, December. And then in the spring, we'll find out whether we're selecting for this. At the same time that we're sort of waiting to see how that funding is going, we're gearing up to address the rest of West Main. West Main right now, if you are not unaware, is about to be under construction for like 3 years. The utility division for the city is ripping up all of West Main, replacing water lines, gas lines. And so at the end of that, we'll have an opportunity to repave the whole thing, put new striping down, and sort of define the space on West Main in a different thing. But until then, we have time to do some planning. At the earliest, we would be able to do striping would be 2027. So we have like 3 years to figure out how does this project match up with the restriping project on West Main? What's sort of the interim condition? Because we know that we're not going to get the funding for this project, even if it is funded, until next decade. So there's going to be a little bit of lag to figure out. And we'll be doing that through a restriping planning effort that'll happen over 27 and 28. Go to the next one. I talked about this just a little bit. So we are putting together a public engagement event with some of the downtown businesses and residents downtown. We don't just want the business folks contributing, we also want the residents who are going to be impacted to participate as well. This isn't going to be sort of the open house style that we've had before. We're going to be asking folks to RSVP and tell us that they intend to come to this, because we're going to group them in focus groups and have them point at a map and say, this is what we're talking about. This is the feedback that we specifically want you to hear. So we're going to be publicizing that over the next few weeks and getting folks to RSVP on that. We're coordinating with Sandy on that, as well as folks from Office of Economic Development and the Downtown Business Group, different downtown. Our tentative date is 27th of April at City Space, but more to come on. I think that is all for me. Happy to answer any questions on my comments about that.
Any questions? Awesome.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
Which
Go ahead, yes, sir.
it's priority one or priority two?
It's one of those.
It says it's priority 2 for the construction division, but statewide priority 4, but I might be in the wrong spot.
There's a lot of segments in there.
There's a lot of segments in there, yeah. I'm not.
Yeah, so the one that's right next to
It's really hard to.
statute is priority. Okay.
Both segments to the east, priority 4, segment to the west, West Main Street is priority 2, as well as Ridge Street is priority 2 south. So it's like,
Yeah, you got a range of needs kind of done.
the other thing is they just updated prioritization in V-Trans, so that's just been posted like the last month, so there is a new prioritization that's out. It's not finalized yet, but the draft is out there. Consideration, and then otherwise you're going back to 2023.
Yeah, if you look at 2023, there are some pretty big needs.
I guess that's a clarification for us to make sure that we understand when we're talking about the priority needs, are we talking about the draft 2025 or the finalized 2023?
Especially if a project takes
Yep.
10 years. How does the priority attach to it? Does it update every year? Does it stick with what it
Special put it was
approves of?
The priority tells you what the data is showing, and that data is what's going to be used to score it. So the most recent data is going to be most closely aligned with what data is going to be used to determine the score. And this from Smart Scale.
It's not telling you you're going to score X because you're priority 1 or you're going to score
Yeah.
because you're priority 2. It's sort of giving you a broad indication of when you put this application in, these are the kind of places.
Next question. Are you also looking at the Monticello Ridge intersection in concert with this? Because I feel like at peak hours, those two intersections are close and they interact. And if you make this one more efficient, you're going to end up having problems from the Monticello intersection.
Yeah, we did do the traffic counts on that and it's part of the traffic modeling for this project. Well, that also wanted to be identified as down the line. That's probably our next step is, branching off from this direction. We have the issue that Monticello, we also have the issue that Preston and McIntyre. So you could go a block in either direction and we have more work. That's probably.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You want me to start us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sure. I'm Jessica Dimmick. I'm the principal transportation planner with Albemarle County. I'm going to be co-presenting with Taylor on.
Raise your voice a little. Thank you. Hold yours.
Yeah. I'm Jessica Dimmick. I'll be presenting with Taylor the projects that are located in Albemarle County. The county has 4 application slots. The MPO has 4 application slots, and all of their slots are located in Albemarle County. Several of the project locations are right next to each other. So we'll be going through them based on geography. We're first going to go to Barracks Road at the 29250 bypass. These are 2 projects that were identified in the Barracks Road project pipeline study that VDOT performed and wrapped up in 2025. And these are solutions to address safety needs as well as pedestrian and bicycle access needs as defined by V-Trans. The county is planning to submit an application for the 29250 southbound ramps on the western side of this interchange. And this is a project that will add a eastbound right turn lane onto the southbound on-ramp. It will relocate a bus stop currently at Surrey Road, which is on the leftmost side of the screen, what is on the south side, which is actually, yeah, that's still the south side of Barracks Road. That bus stop will be relocated to Bennington Road, where you can see the purple in the drawing. And it will add a pedestrian connection from that bus stop to the sidewalk on the north side of Barracks Road and connect to an existing sidewalk, including a crosswalk across the southbound off-ramp, a crosswalk across Barracks Road, and new sidewalk along the south side of the road between the on-ramp and Bennington. It will also construct a median, close the median opening that currently exists at Rickey Road. We just got the cost information from VDOT, and the cost that is here is the total cost of the project, including inflation, which is what will be scored. That will be the cost used for the scoring. I think that's all I have to say.
Do we want to do questions by project?
And this is a value engineer solution, right? So we've seen this area before. Submitted last round. This is us trying to get an improvement at a lower cost to address specific needs on this sector.
Last round, we split it the entire western side of the interchange from here to Georgetown Road, include a roundabout at Georgetown Road, median closure all the way between Georgetown and the interchange. But this portion of it is basically the same as what was submitted in the application last round, just without the rest of it.
This is a priority 2 location.
It's
Go ahead.
I think been here frequently at the rush hour congestion is certainly fact. And I don't know if it qualifies for that rating also, because that is supposed to be important to this yard. I would give it that.
It looks at the congestion, one of the factors that was scored on. We'll look at the change by adding right turn lane, most of the traffic, a lot of traffic, a lot of the traffic coming from Georgetown is basically making a right to want that. By adding the right turn lane, you're improving the flow of traffic that's going into the city because you're separating out that right turn lane, which is very heavy in this location.
Right, and all of the right turners will help up somebody to go to the city.
Correct.
Nothing's
There's
happening.
no right turn.
So the right turn lane go back to Bennington, is that where?
The right turn lane will extend all the way back to Bennington.
So it states that there's a high need priority for transit access and a very high need priority for district safety improvement. For congestion, it's very low.
That's a quick question just to clarify. Are we reorganizing the asphalt that's already there, or are we widening the road to add that priority?
We are widening the road to a certain. We are going to reduce it as much as possible. We are closing the median a little bit through that section. But we're adding the 2-stage crossing in the median, so we can't shrink it down fully. The section further west was going to go with a 4-foot median. This location has got to be wider to accommodate the pedestrian crossing at that location. So we are shrinking it down to the extent possible, but most of it's going to be widening. Because we are adding a shared use path along this frontage, which isn't currently there. There's no sidewalk at all there.
So the widening,
Shared use path, in addition to providing the like.
so the widening to the west and that green is for the shared use path. And then the median is getting wider to provide a refuge for any pedestrians crossing over there.
And what's the width of the now? Well, there's
Is it
Like
median?
that. Right down the road. On the right hand edge of your screen, there's.
it looks like it's
Right there by the mural, there's.
which part are you talking about? Yeah, so how wide is the median now?
We gotta accommodate. We've got to accommodate the sidewalk. Actually, it's gonna be the shared use. We're gonna be crossing the sidewalk, which isn't there. There's no crossing there now.
Right, yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay. And can you remind me what the rules are about the pedestrian recognition?
It's not a straight cross, it's a zigzag. So you're gonna go up parallel and you'll have a second. So it's a two-stage cross. Not sure what the width of the cross is, but it's gonna be I don't know if it's 8 or 10 feet.
I mean, yeah, those are design details that we're not even.
I appreciate having the shared use path. My note about having kind of a jagged crosswalk there is that right turns at a short distance are really hard on a bike. That extreme turn, if you're crossing the street there on your bike. Are we assuming people are walking it? It's like. And if there's a way to align the crosswalk there.
On the north side of the streets. So there's no, it's not a shared use path on the side. It's just a sidewalk.
And
shared use path is all along the south side. Where there's nothing there.
and you're sure that it's a shared use path and not a sidewalk?
This portion is a shared use path.
On the south side.
The ramp to Bennington Road is the shared use path. Once you cross the ramp, it goes from, because we can't go underneath the bridge with a shared use path, we're basically going to continue it as 8-foot sidewalk, and then it's going to narrow down to a 5-foot sidewalk, go underneath the bridge on the south side. The north side is just a 5-foot sidewalk along this existing that's out there. We are going to make it, reconstruct it to meet ADA requirements. If it's not, doesn't meet requirements now, but it wasn't something that's going to be necessarily improved.
Okay, because where are the people on the shared use path going?
Well, that was a piece of the project that was supposed to continue to the west as part of the larger application. So that's what it would do in the future in that other section.
But I think it's really, the bus platform is going to be there, so it's providing access to that.
And the people from all that neighborhood on the south side, they don't have any facilities. This will connect to that neighborhood. So they can get to this and use that facility. It just, there's a section up that's not going to be wide. Once you go through the interchange, it's going to widen back out to 8 feet and continue 8 feet all the way to the private street entrance. Just before you get there's creek and it's full of banana trail.
Okay, sorry. Just to clarify. So here 8-foot wide, here nothing, there 8-foot wide?
There's going to be a sidewalk in the middle, but there's not going to be a shared use path. We cannot fit.
Okay, so there'll be a sidewalk, but no crosswalk here.
There'll be a crosswalk and there'll be an 8-foot wide section to receive it. And then it will narrow down to a sidewalk through that section. Then it'll widen back out to 8 feet.
Do you want to just
So it's-
what?
Yeah, I would. Realistically,
Yeah.
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 Section. Apologies. But still, the zag on that median is a little funky for actual usage. Just to know.
With the designs and detail, will there be traffic control for people maneuvering in any of the multimodal, not particular things going east continuing. So right now, people are either going straight east, turning south, or if they're not there, then the people going west and turning south are, everybody's using that intersection 100% of the time. So it will be a full stop for everybody.
For the pedestrian crossings, there's control.
Okay. That's good.
And will there be a right turn on red? Like, is it slip lane style or is it?
It's, they're gonna have to stop. So we'll have to, we haven't worked out logistics on all of that, so this is just the preliminary. Once we get it, if we get it funded, we'll have to go through a whole intricate design process. And a lot of that stuff will be vetted completely in that process. We just want to get enough information so that we can come up with a reasonable cost estimate. And make sure we're not gonna forget something.
Does your reasonable cost so far include rock or that one? Because there's a rock mountain right there. Somebody's
Corner.
so you've done boards, I would assume, to get to the.
No, I was sloppy, we should never invest that much money in that case.
That house is in that interesting house. We looked at that.
It's just the vertical 12-foot.
Well, right figure us. But you do have, there's a little there, because the driveway is set higher than the road, so we know we're gonna go back to the. I met with those folks when we were doing the other project. Oh.
Right. So I think that was a good segue into the next one that we have here. So this is the MPO's project along the same stretch, but at the off ramp. And so I want to first acknowledge that this is different from what you all first saw in December. So when you first saw this project, it was the dual left turns off the ramp and a ramp extension. And so since these concepts that we just received a couple days ago, and how the project has changed, is that now instead of a ramp extension, it is an auxiliary lane that connects the Barracks Road off ramp to the Leonard Sandridge on ramp. And the reason for that is because when they first did reviewing the first sketch that was completed, they determined that the space between those two ramps was actually substandard. And so they opted to connect them instead in this design. I hope I explained that correctly. Okay. And so the preliminary cost for this one is 21.4 million. And just like with the previous one, this is the inflated cost with contingency added for this project.
So we did change the alignment a little bit to shift it away from, so it's not doesn't go to that historic property as much as to the extent possible. So we did.
We're concerned.
Oh, I understand.
We've analyzed this and based on our analysis, and we're just encouraging you all to come to us and have a conversation, because when we saw this, we were surprised. And couple of things, according to our analysis, this does go on UVA land. We've constructed a right of way based on our data, but we would need to confer with you on that. This particular property is both nationally and state listed. It's an 18th century core in the building, and it was part of a large historic farm, so it has regional significance. So we would encourage VDOT to have a conversation with us about this, and we would of course prefer to see the ramp move further towards the roadway rather than further towards us. But
if you look closely at the paved out area, that's the accommodate both those vehicles making an left turn. To accommodate both those and still not hit the bridge, we have to. There's limits to what we can do with the skew. We won't make it T. We're going to skew it, keep it skewed. It's just pushing it closer, just further makes it closer to the bridge. So there's limits to it without basically totally rebuilding it. So we're all trying to fit all that together. The other thing is, we sent this down for environmental to look at it for sound wall, so we'll get that back too. So the cost estimate for this may change.
Yeah,
We're just requesting a conversation.
Yeah, environmentalists rare this because they brought it to LED's attention. And LED back and we looked at it, they tried to tighten it up as much as possible.
So is that all involved in the I don't think there's no possible. I mean, they require us to put sound on this thing. Like we're going to have a conversation about
both applications, this one and the other.
Yeah.
You mean this one and which one?
The other thing.
Okay.
The old argument. They all both have to be. This one originally came back, the original solution came back not needing sound walls, but because we extended it, they have to be revised.
And yeah, so what is the distance of the extension?
Let's say it's a couple hundred feet, it's not straight enough. Problem is though, the acceleration from Leonard Sanders,
I think we said 300.
yeah, I think it's like.
So this is again widening the road.
Yeah, it sounds like going wide.
Connecting is definitely. So.
It's an additional 300 feet from what we were initially.
And the primary goal of this project would address
safety. I mean, right now, in certain times of the day, the ramp use out on bypass. And this is basically trying to address that issue because it's causing a lot of crashes on the bypass related to people having to wait to get onto the get off the ramp.
And the 38% of crashes along the Berkshire corridor occurred at the northbound south routes. What is the time frame of that data?
5 years. 21 to 25.
And what's severity? What's severity?
I don't know. Exactly. I have to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something as part of we're doing an OZAR for this project. As part of that, we're going to update all of
that's what that is.
it's our operational safety. Reports, and it's basically going to look at all of this, and it's part of the not environmental document, but something we have to do to get that interchanges primarily to when we make modifications at a certain level. We have to do this study, and as part of that study, we will update the crash data. We will also update the operations analysis we just met last week.
And so this data was taken from the Barracks Road pipeline study that was completed. And so we can go back into that and pull out the pages for you.
We're going to update as part of this report we're working on right now. We're going to update that. Yeah.
And for the cost benefit analysis overall, adding those 300 extra feet, that's something that's not. Remind me again, for the process with smart scale applications, you submit the project as is and you don't say, but if you want us to take that off, we can.
Yeah.
It's kind of all or nothing.
The concept of the project and the elements that provide the benefit, that's what you're really focused on. But there's through the project, like what Ms. Mallett was talking about the rock. If we encounter rock as we start PE, we're not done. We're going to figure out a way to get that. I mean, that happens through project development, but the concept of the project as presented when scored at smart scale, we're kind of locked in those things unless there's a reason to change it and we go before the change committee to request that change.
I was more asking like if this adds more cost to it, they turn it down because of this additional cost. There's no way for us to quickly go back and say, okay, we'll take that part out.
It's basically what you submit is what you're getting scored on.
Right.
You can't change
So
it.
So what is the risk benefit analysis that went into deciding to add this extension?
I think it's a bridge, right?
Well, no, it's because if we extended the off ramp to where we were initially, it shortens the distance between the on-ramp and the off-ramp, introducing new safety issues. We didn't want to introduce a new safety issue, trying to resolve an existing safety issue. That's what the determination was when it went through the QC process.
And for risk, I'm sorry, I meant risk getting the application awarded versus not by making the price higher.
And I mean, we have an estimate, and that's just a high level cost estimate, but they're just finished this concept, they just got this. So they have price. This actual concept hasn't been priced yet. So the estimate that we have in the portal is not necessarily reflecting it.
But I think you do make a valid point.
Yeah.
If you can address, smart scale won't catch this, right? I don't think. If we create an issue, it won't catch it in the score, but we all have to be aware that when it gets, if it gets funded and get constructed, you're going to have to solve another problem in the future. That,
Well, either that or will during the design process, this might show up as an issue, and then we gotta figure out how to.
how to fund it.
When we're actually designing this project. So it's better to catch it now as opposed to waiting and then become a problem when we're designing the project before we construct it and have to figure out how to pay for it.
And for you mentioned sound walls. Can you explain the process of the review and timing, and does that happen before the pre-app or is that during?
It's
How's
not
the
necessarily
order
during
defense there?
yeah, I know about this. They just got this concept. And we're sending it down to environmental sections of the office to do a noise analysis. They'll let us know if it's gonna require.
And let you know in time to include that in the
Yes.
pre-app.
Well, not
In the full
necessarily. And that would be typical.
And I mean, it's a due diligence thing. We ask them because if it's going to be, we need to know now, right? And if it's going to be potentially needed, it needs to be added in the estimate, but just the cost down low. Going to price you out of anything that's competitive.
So I just want to make sure that my concerns have been registered, because
Yes.
I really haven't had that reflected back.
You are.
Okay.
That would be something. I know environmentals.
Well, I'll take that back. I'll step in here because we're not going to end up Fontaine Part 2.
Okay.
If there's going to be a project that's going to be proposed that we're going to submit, and then a stakeholder's going to come in once it's funded and say we've got issues, we're not. So if there's issues, we need to work through them. If we can't work through them, we need to go back to them.
We appreciate that. It's change, you get and see the staff level, not see somebody.
Well, we just got this one, so
You
I wasn't
did.
aware of it till.
The location of design officially sent these out for review.
Yeah.
So don't get your niggers involved yet.
Okay, so like tech committee hasn't reviewed it.
No, this is all new.
This is all.
This is all new information.
Yeah. We talked about it.
Yeah.
Got it from Zoom, sorry.
But for application and design engineers.
So the way we do this, we have consultants look at planning study, and then we pass it off to our staff to work with other consultants, put these concepts together that meet the design criteria to make sure we've got a project that meets standards and also we can estimate. That's the way. So this is the kind of getting the concept down on paper without doing a whole bunch of it's real engineering, but we're not going out doing exploratory stuff. But this is where our design engineers help us frame up a real true cost.
The on the ground turning this one, it would have still it's I drive only a 60-foot trailer, but regularly and in this quarter a lot. I would assume that you're gonna pull back the sidewalk and pull back the median so that the truck in the left-hand lane or even the right-hand lane can easily do that. And you're still 75 feet away or 100 feet away from the pavement, rather than leaving it the way it's drawn on there right now, which means the jackknife, right angle. Agree.
The tracking would be further, because that's why, you look on the right side of the ramp, there's a blacked out area, that's additional asphalt that's added,
So that's a swing.
so you can make it wider. Because those larger vehicles, like you're saying. You turn into, it made that turn.
As long as you
So
put
space.
off things on the road, because that will encourage other people to do what somebody tried to do next, with that passing on the right, and especially to the right side. So anyway, I was mixed up when I thought you were talking about moving on to the Duke property, the UVA property on the south side, on the east side of that swing, but it's not, it's on the.
A issue you're talking about. You've gotta have so much room before you get to the abutment, which is where the bridge it comes in on the north side. You've got to be able to get those lanes back in line with underpass. So there's only so much room, and the skewed angle that we've got coming off the ramp, that affects that radius of those vehicles making that turn. So you can't make it too sharp, or the vehicles can't make the turn.
And is this limited to 40-foot box, or are you leaving it designed for 60-foot box tractor trailer? Because there are lots of places that are not designed.
I'm not sure. I think they're using. So, G 62. It's gonna be big.
Okay, thank you.
All right, can I give one point of clarification with design real quick? Because I heard that we're talking about the last project, discussion about the sidewalk under bypass. Is it sidewalk or is it shared use path? Because in this design, it's the hot off the presses design. I'm seeing shared use path here, and it's very excited about that.
It's a 8-foot wide sidewalk
Big fat sidewalk.
because it doesn't meet the shared use path requirements.
Got it.
Because I figured you guys would prefer that over a sidewalk.
Big fat sidewalk.
Because you guys can say it's a shared use path. How many more do we have?
6.
Why don't we
Right.
go to the next one?
We're gonna keep moving.
Okay. We're moving over to Crozet now. This is at the intersection of US 250, Rockfish Gap Turnpike, and Old Trail Drive. The proposal here is for a roundabout that was identified in the Crozet master plan. This, like all of the other projects, are in the constrained LRTP. This particular project was submitted twice for smart scale in prior rounds and narrowly missed being funded both times. The image on the next slide shows the sketch as was submitted last round. We are currently working with VDOT on this. The proposal is essentially the same, a roundabout with pedestrian crossings across 250 as well as the side streets, and some sidewalk connections. One of the things we're working with VDOT on is to potentially extend the sidewalk on the southwest corner further south along the high school entrance to connect to a sidewalk that was recently constructed as part of the parking lot expansion. And potentially shifting, we're still working through this, so Chuck and Sandy, correct me if I'm misstating anything, but potentially shifting that crosswalk from the eastern leg of the intersection to the western leg of the intersection.
I think we're keeping it.
All 4 legs have a crosswalk.
I mean, the thing is, you want to get from the middle school to the high school, and it's better to have them on the east side than it is to the west side. You only have to cross 2 legs versus.
If it's possible to put a crosswalk across all 4 legs, that is ideal.
It's just cost.
Yeah.
It's possible.
And the other thing to note is that we have been in conversations with Albemarle County Public Schools to get to try to bring down some of the right-of-way cost or reduce the right-of-way risk. The unfortunate thing is that that cost reduction cannot be counted until there is an actual deed in place. And so for this round, we will not get any reduced cost savings, even though we have had positive conversations with the school.
And the date for this, that would have to be achieved by August or by June.
By August 1st, the pre-application deadline. The full application deadline. Is that what no, I said pre-application. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Update, basically, including the test.
So it has to be before, yeah, in time for you all to. Yeah.
If we're doing the same thing, the developer in the north, west quadrant.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Or for the school property, you just need a right of way letter. If it's public property, you just need a letter. If it's a developer, if it's a private owner, not public, that's where you need the deed.
Okay. I'm looking at my colleagues to make sure.
Get that deed. Or I guess.
A letter.
Deed.
We need a letter for the
We
schools.
work to meet your requirement, particularly the bar.
Well, I think it's just.
The staff's working on that?
We are.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You want to move to the next one? Yes. Okay, now we're going back to the 29-250 bypass, this time near Ivy Road. Ivy Road was studied in a VDOT pipeline study, which wrapped up in 2025. And there are 4 project applications at this location. I'll speak to the first 2 that will be submitted by the county, and then Taylor will speak to the second 2 that will be submissions by the MPO. This project that you're seeing now, Project C, is a version of Project D. This one is direct recommendations from the project pipeline study. It would construct a roundabout at the intersection of Ivy Road, Canterbury, and Old Ivy. Another roundabout at Ivy Road and Boar's Head Drive, and a median in between the 2 for access management, as well as a shared use path, the details of which we're still working on with VDOT on. You can see the cost here is $38 million, which is much higher than the average costs that Taylor mentioned, both for the district grant program and the high priority projects program. So we are planning to submit that to see how it scores. Project D on the next slide is kind of a scaling back of that to just the roundabout at Ivy and Canterbury, as well as some portion of shared use path along Ivy Road. The cost that we've been given for this is just shy of $17 million, which is more in line with the cost figures of average funded projects in prior rounds. So this is kind of a funding strategy to implement the recommendations from the pipeline study in this area.
So in a sense, it is doing that thing we were just talking about where it's like, well, you ask for too much, so you get nothing. This is, you're asking for the whole thing. And also this
separate project.
A separate project, so
Separately,
we're
but
using 2 of our
you know,
4 slots, yeah.
Right. And so there is, of the 4 slots, this is using 2 of them, and you would have to drop something else to add in the other roundabout as the 3rd slot.
If we wanted to just try for Boar's Head roundabout alone, that's right. What we saw in the analysis was that while there are issues at Boar's Head, the safety issues are much greater at Canterbury, and so that will score very well alone. Whereas Boar's Head, if we pursue Boar's Head just alone, the crash data will not give you as much benefit for the cost.
And go back a slide. Is the obvious answer to why that project is more expensive just right away acquisition? To wrap up.
Well, it also includes rebuilding the median, because we're basically closing the median between the two roundabouts. So you'll have a solid.
I mean, look, okay. I look at the one on the left, I look at the one on the right, my eyes, the one on the right looks more expensive to me, so. It's 17 million to do the one on the right alone?
There's also a shared use path.
It should be. Boy, they shared use path.
Relative to the car bags, we can. Yeah, but that is interesting. Together, that means that the Boar's Head one is $20 million.
The difference is not just the Boar's Head roundabout, but also the median in between the two and the extension of a shared use path beyond what would be constructed at Canterbury alone.
Is story impacted by the existence of that force that cover the protected terminals that were there? So it reduces the safety issue there. People come out, westbound and eastbound, protected lanes, and with those delineator jugs to have people check out. There was a bunch of solution already in place, so that
Does it make sense to the point earlier about connecting and links is if the Canterbury gets approved, there's a shared use path. Then later, the Boar's Head one now has something to link to and so the points get higher? Is that gaming the system effectively or is that?
Six, and I guess.
Well, so we built score better.
Right, you've said that it scores better if it connects to something, and right now it doesn't. And if you build them both together, they're connected to each other, but if you get the Canterbury one now and it works, and then later when you want to apply for the Boar's Head one, it is connecting to the shared use path that wasn't existing before, and so the points get the scores.
We're also, it's not shown on here, but we are adding crosswalk on the west side of the intersection, as well as sidewalk on the frontage of those businesses to connect to the sidewalk that's already there. So that's going to be also included, it's not listed as something we were adding.
So it doesn't get points, but it's going to be.
No, it will get points.
Okay, so why is it?
It's just that we're still working. I mean, we don't have those sketches, but that's something that we're planning to include. And there is an existing crosswalk there now. We're going to be a request from the county to make sure that got.
Well, ultimately, this path will connect with the drainage trail. It's good to get it done.
Well, we don't necessarily know. And I think when we did this study, we didn't know what that alignment was going to be, so we didn't really include it in the study for this portion because we weren't sure if it's going to go here or somewhere else. I told them to talk about that during this study development on whether we needed to show something like that here, not to. We weren't sure of those.
Right, then for the MPO's projects, the first one is an off-ramp extension at Ivy Road. And this location is a VTrans Priority 3 location. And this project includes increasing the length of the off-ramp by approximately 600 feet. And so the estimated cost for this one, again, this is inflated and with contingency, 10.7 million for right now.
This one concerns me because what's happening here that, because this is the one that I got into VTrans and really nerded out on, and I can't find in it any of the needs or the priorities that, like it's not saying that safety is a need. So what drove this?
Backing out onto the highway.
It's exactly the same as the eastbound. The traffic getting off the exit backs that halfway to Berkshire, the left, in the travel every single day.
Is that because stab is backing up into the travel?
It's nothing to do with that. It's not, everybody is.
It's part of it.
That's up from Canada. Section. That's up from that intersection. Right.
So we're giving people more space to hang out.
Get out.
Yeah.
What's happening is we're starting to see a rise in the because people just have to stop and people behind them can't get through and avoid getting it. Like running into.
But then what happens when we get more people living over here? We just keep building wider on
We're
it.
hoping that the Canterbury roundabout will address the operations issues so we don't have that queuing. But like I said, a part of it is, like Sean said, you want to find out where you can make an impact with combining a bunch of different projects into the solution to address the issue. By doing both, we shouldn't have that issue. Because the roundabout, if you do Canada, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't have queuing here, but the queuing would be reduced because you can funnel more people through that intersection more efficiently. And they won't have to queue up waiting for the light to change.
For a while. For one car out of the neighborhood said right turn for a minute, when that car's coming on.
Well, it's still just the operation. I got they want the function well.
Oh, no, I'm a big fan of roundabouts. I'm just saying it's also reduced. I mean, it's not solved, it's a temporary solution that will, in 15 years, when there's more housing out in the county and not enough in the city, that will also.
And that's a land use decision.
So in the meantime, do we participate in that or do we resist the urge?
I mean, I've got to try to solve the problem that we've got right now.
Yeah, we can't ignore the safety problem.
The safety problem is an issue we have.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out because V-Trans says it's not a safety problem. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right now, from the operation is that and black tenants, right? But that's when they did the study, which is 2 years ago. So right now, it's back in
Those were the part of a pipeline study. And the pipeline study looked at a large area that was at the time a part of a V-Trans meeting. Correct?
Right.
The recommendations from that study make the project applicable to be applied for high priority funds also, correct? But that may be some of the disconnect that you're seeing too. Because at the time, we went through a pipeline study that looked at Ivy Road and everything around it because we're having all these issues. That study came up with multiple recommendations, which is an OIP approved, that we went through OIP to get it done. So the results of that study are almost inherently, I guess you kind of look at that.
Yeah, because it just seems pretty far downstream. I don't think the Canterbury roundabout's going to solve everything from the left,
updated,
whatever that side is, that north.
the updated V-Trans needs went from a 3 for this segment of 250 to a 2 for this segment of 250. And it starts at basically the Gore area and heads north. So basically what that's saying is the queues are backing up and it's causing a problem at that segment of the bypass because people are backing up with the bypass. But it's not reflecting because you don't have a lot of issues on Canterbury. It's not falling. Ramp.
Yeah, that
The
bridge.
section of ramp.
And there's no like multimodal, anything built into this. This is just making more freeway, basically.
Well,
Right. I mean, it's just this it's just an odd thing. It's just a chunk that seems like a Band-Aid for a bigger problem.
Solving things. We tried this conversation at this table.
Yeah.
The newest members excluded. But this is the whole point. Do the big freaking project that costs 80 million and fix all the problems. Or value engineer down and do little things.
To get you a
And
bit.
then bounce back up and do a little bit bigger things. And it's ridiculous. And this goes to my funding problem. If the funding was better, we would probably do solutions that were better than these kind of problems.
I ruined your optimism for the day, man. It's so fun.
Confidence in getting our roundabouts done, which everyone knows are safer and better than the efficient, yada yada.
Because now we're looking at Fontaine, there's a problem of 118 down. You could expand out like the solutions all across this whole corridor. And then it links over to where it hits up on 29 and how they're coming off at 250. We haven't even talked about UPA events when they hit up and what happens on the event track.
Well, if we're getting that right now, we're talking sprawl, which is the land use problem. It's back to, it's a transportation Band-Aid on a housing.
So
Years before we don't need. We cannot solve any of this, making everybody think that they have to walk the police go to town. It's just not. We're gonna be dealing with like many years.
but right now we have cars on the highway. And we've got issues at Canterbury, we've got issues down in Fontaine, we've got issues at 118. And, all of this works together. We got issues at Barracks Road and 250. Yeah, submit that project, see if it gets approved. I mean, somehow they get bridges and tunnels built underwater, huge projects. But when we have big massive projects that could really maybe do better solutions elsewhere in the state, it seems to not. Like, it's not an option.
No, 17. But Kevin Secretary. We have 3 huge medical center facilities with this also, which is all day.
All right, I am gonna mention this, there is no way I'm letting the meeting go past 5 p.m. on Friday. So if you wanna continue through,
So I just want to clarify that the county's choosing to apply for this instead of the Morse roundabout.
No,
These are
MPO
projects.
to us.
Yeah.
Got it. And this is a good point. The projects that you're seeing right now, the ramp improvement projects that you're seeing right now are the only projects the MPO is eligible for. So you're not making a decision on the MPO will submit this or submit something else. These are the projects that are ready that are eligible to be submitted by the MPO.
But this isn't one of those, this is only the weirder ones because it is such a, like a doglet, it's a tiny thing that's not connected to any other. I mean, we're talking about the roundabout, but that's a separate submission. It's not built into any other thing. And we're talking about 7 years from now.
So I will tell you right now, if I could make this happen
Yeah.
tomorrow, I do.
Right, I'm saying tomorrow would be great.
To fix the safety. So I can't wave that magic wand and do it. So the only path to get a small incremental change to help with a current safety issue is this, or we apply for safety.
That was my next question my question really was, if this, in 7 years, this issue is gonna be either way worse or completely different from what we're looking at right now. This is a safety issue right now, we're saying. And it's a Band-Aid for that. But you're talking about, are there other ways to go about this than, I mean, this isn't a state issue, is this even really gonna score well? Because it's priority 3.
This is a state.
This is a stage.
It's actually required.
It's on. It's
So
on.
this
yeah,
information was
state.
taken from the pipeline study when it was complete. And so what Chuck is referencing is the updated V-Trans needs that we have.
Oh.
I don't.
And we're showing on this slide in the priority 3, insert talk about priority 1, priority 2, something outside.
So it is priority 3, that's correct.
That's what I thought, but I'm new, so, okay, we can keep moving, but yeah, I think this is a problem right now that cannot wait that long, and so I didn't know if this is one of the ones where you were like, it's a small project, it doesn't really serve this, that our plans to be multimodal, it doesn't serve plans to, work together to make better flow, it's really like a Band-Aid project, and so I didn't know if there were other Band-Aid funds that were better for that, but let's keep moving because we've 7 minutes.
Well, design projects have gone forward, but that process, just needs to make sure we're ready for that kind of service.
All right, so the next project here is an on-ramp extension at Ivy Road. And so increasing the length of the on-ramp and adding an additional on-ramp from Old Ivy Road. And then similar to the Barracks project, connecting the Ivy Road on-ramp with the Leonard Sandridge off-ramp by an auxiliary lane. This one is a V-Trans Priority 2 location, and the preliminary cost estimate is $13.9 million.
Question about the 9% of crashes, the 22. I assume that's the same years as the other one. But how many were on the north side and how many were on the south side?
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but I can send that to you.
Since they are two separate projects.
How does this impact all the construction going on and the demand and needs that are at Leonard Sandridge now? I don't know what's being built there. I know there's trail that's out
It's
there.
private, yeah, it's
Okay.
a private development. And so what was your question?
Well, it seems like now if you were going into if that's going to make more demand for people to go into, how does this impact? Are you now going all the way around and coming back when you could like get there?
More about how you get in and out of that development.
Yeah, that new development.
It's right, it's Old Ivy with Old Ivy Road. There's everybody who's entering and exiting is on Ivy Road.
On Ivy Road.
Yeah, there's no access from Leonard's.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right. And so the last one is Fifth Street at I-64, exit 120. So this project initially was previously submitted, so the Fifth Street DDI, and the concept is on the next screen. And so recently there was another study on that to value engineer it, to bring the cost down because it was too expensive previously due to a bridge replacement that was included in the previous project. And so currently the preliminary cost estimate that we have for the existing concept, 44.7 million. And so this would convert the existing interchange to a diverging diamond interchange, construct shared use path along Fifth Street northbound from the previously funded Fifth Street Trail and Hub project to the I-64 westbound off-ramp. I won't read every single one of those, but there are a lot of pedestrian crossings that are in this project, and they're also controlled. Adding fencing to the bridge, so even though we can't do a full bridge replacement right now, we can make it feel safer. And there will also be signage for bikers to dismount when they're crossing the bridge. And then additionally at the Holiday Inn, constructing a bus boarding platform and a shelter pad at Fifth Street Landing. And so this project would construct the bus boarding platform, and separately, CAT would coordinate to submit to DRPT to fund a shelter for this location. Any questions on this one?
Do we have any data how the Diamond is doing at 250 and 64 near Martha Jeff?
That's
Do
what in what metric?
it's confusing to drive through, which I think slows people down and makes it safer, but I wondered if it actually was safer and if their crashes were less there like that.
It removes the left, because of the complex it got rid of, that's why it's flowing better. And then I would offer the fact that they do have to go slower to know what they're doing. Is making anything less severe.
But it's also designed. where you
Yeah.
know, you can't speed.
It's like
Yeah.
a roundabout.
Yeah.
Yeah. Overriding the like safety purpose of that, but that's good.
But yeah, it's like the roundabout. It's like people are like, what is you? Oh, you what's
I did full safety data on that 50, the Virgin Diamond a while back, and it was amazing how many fewer crashes we had. Because Martha Jefferson had some issues with it, they were asking us about it, so I looked at it, and the number of accidents is significant.
I've got a quick question on this slide.
Mhm.
Can someone walk me down the shared use path headed out of town? So we're on it, we go across the off ramp, then we go across 2 lanes, then across another 2 lanes, then to the left, then we go under the off ramp? No.
There'll be a call. There'll be a
There's-
person there, it's just not, she's
I got it, okay, because it was
It doesn't go to the third crosswalk, that's just sidewalk.
The diagram doesn't show the crosswalk there. There should be a diagram. Should be on that.
It's just a pedestrian crossing, it's not a shared use path crossing. Because ultimately, when we place the bridge, the shared use path will be in the middle, not on the outside.
Okay.
We've been in negotiable, we've been talking with VDOT about potentially picking up the charity path from the southern side of this as well.
Okay, thanks. I think just the lack of the zebra crossing there was confusing. And then there's nothing on the south side. Sorry.
Yes, I will.
I know.
Bring a charity path from Old Lynchburg Road, where there is a roundabout. We're trying to bring that north. You can see the apartment complex that's.
Yeah.
We're gonna be able to do developer contribution for charity path at their entrance. Currently, there's a sidewalk that continues from their entrance, just as you can see on this project, then there's no facility at all. We're talking with VDOT about if that should be a sidewalk.
And if it's on anyone's work plan or to-do list anywhere, making a protected lane or shared use path down Sunset, Sweet Pillars.
Sunset or
Thinking the old Lynchburg, the next one over.
The Sunset extension that goes under 64, that connects us all.
I think that was submitted several years ago by the county. I have to go back and look. That was an application that was submitted.
It's funded everything.
No, I think there's another.
there was, you're right. There was a sunset improvement project, the very first round.
Yeah.
Smart stuff.
Yeah.
It was not funded, it has, but that's right there. We have been partnership developers to piece together an eventual shared span.
Yeah, that's a great link.
Yeah, we're trying to come from this interchange, basically with following. Of following creeks.
Okay.
Great, so I think we got all of our questions
Yeah, you're not
for
asking
now. Okay, and so just tying it all back together, I just wanted to pull out from our long-range transportation plan to build on what Sean was saying. We already have a regional vision, right, which is moving toward 2050, our adopted LRTP. And so I listed the goals. I won't walk through every single one of these since I know that we're tight on time, but just bringing the focus back to that. And preparing for future funding strategies. So as Sean mentioned, leveraging the LRTP as our foundation. So we have goals, we have priorities, and we have a project list for the region. But is that still the priority? Going back through those project lists and seeing how they align with what's a priority in the city and in the county. And so I know that's work that Albemarle County is currently doing, walking back through your transportation priorities. I know the city has done work prioritizing bicycle and pedestrian initiatives for the city. And so doing the same thing at the MPO, looking through our LRTP, getting a status of all those projects and bringing it back for our committees to say, are these still the priorities? And then finally, matching the projects to funding programs. So making sure we're in alignment for that funding pursuit, which projects should go to which funding sources. And so this is the same chart that you all have seen at a previous meeting, but really just doing the work to figure out what's going to be the best fit for the priorities that we have as a region. So next steps, the pre-application deadline is April 1st. And so next, April 7th, all of this information will go back before MPO Technical Committee. And so a lot of this was new today. So Tech Committee will get the same update. And at your April 22nd meeting, the goal is to get the resolution of support to accompany our full applications. And so MPO Tech will make a recommendation, then you all will make a recommendation for the resolution, and we will coordinate with the local jurisdictions to also be on their agendas to get the resolutions.
Do we vote as a package or do we vote on each one separately?
You can vote however you'd like to. And then after that, OIP, VDOT, and DRPT review those pre-applications and give us any feedback for those. The full application deadline is August 1st. January of next year, we should look for that staff recommended funding scenario. So how did the projects do, just based on score? And then next June is when CTB would vote to adopt a VDOT 6-year improvement program.
Are you already planning to share out the project list with all of us? I know that some small groups in here are working on already.
Yes.
Saving a lot of time.
I can pull what's currently in our long-range transportation plan. Yes.
Good enough to find. Love to be able to help with that.
And then follow back up on that question that you just asked, whether the policy board and MPO Tech will vote on project or package. I think it'd be helpful for staff to get direction from you all on how you want that presented to you, so we can come to you with those draft resolutions already prepared. Generally, in the past, it has been all projects listed on one resolution. If you're intending to consider them separately, I'd like to bring them to you separately so that you have the draft language in front of you to vote on.
Okay, we can talk to our team and then at the agenda setting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other things for you all? All right, one comment, or any comments from anyone on the policy? I would say that this kind of work is something that I've appreciated. I found this substantive helpful today. And we may need to think in pre-agenda as well of how to work these into normal regular
work sessions.
Because I gotta be honest with you, I get it, we get updates, we get reports. But this to me is different than a report that I can read. And if I can get this 15 minutes of airtime, I'd rather do that and get a report that I can read. And know that I can pull and ask questions of. So I know sometimes these committees get into a cadence and we do it because that's the way we've always done it. But this is a shift, I think, in how we can start having good conversation. I think it also should be that in terms of reading reports, pull in what even the TJPDC umbrella is doing. Just like we're kind of getting a look under the tent between Albemarle and Charlottesville to understand what the counties are doing around us as well, because I know TJPDC does some of that, helps them with that work. So I think that's easy to be able to collaborate and provide to us. I have one question for you, Mr. Myers. I know, given your career, that you know the reality on the ground of what we're talking about.
Pardon me.
In terms, though, of transportation priorities that the two legislative bodies set, is that, and it's just a I don't know question for me, is that something that at your level you're aware of what we've prioritized? I mean, you know the reality, but in terms of this area is more important than this area on a prioritization list that a board of supervisors or a city council goes. And with what you do, would that even be helpful to know that?
Yes, it is. And Sean shares that information with me consistently. So,
but do you know how many are on our transportation priorities?
I know it's too many for me to even think about priority.
So that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying the county's transportation priorities. Is the last count, Kevin, 169, 170?
We're up to 160.
160.
We're updating it right now.
And to see what those are, now we have to go, they're going through the process to bring to the board to do a reprioritization. The current one's on based off of 2023. But to me, I'm asking, like, is that helpful to see how the board of supervisors thinks of what's on the list and where it's at in an order?
absolutely.
Because I don't think that's something you have
I
necessarily.
mean, I've seen you all list, but I mean, it comes to the conversation I would have with Captain Byard talk about is when it comes to smart scale and the project that he is, get a recommendation.
Sure.
There's a strategy where he doesn't have to agree with that recommendation. So if I know that this project in Albemarle County is their top priority, they've been trying to get it for 6 years, but it didn't score well, I could make a recommendation to say, you may want to consider funding this project over these other ones, because I'm having this conversation with all of them. Trying to have an understanding from my stand as a district engineer to help him with the Culpeper district, the 9 counties and the city that we have to help through.
Great, because I think that's something we need to just make sure we're thinking and Ben, how many, or city councilors, how many, items on your transportation?
We're actually just starting writing what those, like,
But in the past, has there been like 100, 150?
we haven't had a consistent. So that we're pushing out into like the bike ped master plan or streets that were
kind of
spread around different this. And that's part of the reason that we go back and do a new ability plan to pull together. What's right.
What I'm learning through working at the PGPDC on the commission level is understanding what each of the 6 localities are dealing with and what scale they have. Because you can get so hyper focused on your own jurisdiction or us and our 2 city counties. But having that scope and understanding of what they're dealing with ultimately is what helps us get to this funding issue about the bigger problem. Because that I wasn't getting frustrated with you about your points about the thing. It's getting frustrated about that's the constraint we're getting put in to have to deal with that frustration because of the bigger funding issue. So I would Christine hope that we could maybe loop in those other localities and what we're doing for them, even though it's outside of the MPO jurisdiction, just for awareness. And it doesn't even have to be something we talk about. It's just so they're in there and we have it as a.
Sean, in your regional approach, are we regional in this room today? Or are we regional in the still to the other parts of the Culpeper district and some of the planning is in Electric? So and get it.
But I'm saying, we just need to keep that government, in my opinion, the MPO is where the MPO work needs to happen. Outside of that.
Right, and I mean, we talked about, it's how it all connects in. We got the folks stepping into the town, they're all coming to Charlottesville via Albemarle and around Albemarle, and understanding what their road projects are. It's just knowledge that's important to have when we think regionally how everything's working. But I appreciate that. Are there other comments? Yeah.
That image. People here were involved in transportation at the state level, the funding buckets, what you're describing basically is like, Charlottesville is the center of the donut. There's Albemarle, people are coming from Greene, Louisa, Savannah, Nelson to get to Charlottesville, as the economic center of a lot of the region, basically. And it is the responsibility of each of those entities to support their constituents. But that means for Charlottesville, it's the responsibility of us not to make Charlottesville a parking lot for all of those people. So when we talk about transportation options, I mean, we have CARTA going on too, but cars are not the only thing that we want funded enthusiastically. That is not the only thing, the only way to get people around. And when you have that scale, it's simply there's a finite amount of space, and the amount of space a person takes up is very different than the amount of space a car takes up. So just long-term thinking about how we prioritize transportation funding statewide and where those dollars can go. That is the responsibility I have to Charlottesville, but also to our region, because air quality, congestion, all of that affects everybody.
And I think to Ned's point, to add on to what you said, is a lot of our surrounding counties outside of the urbanized area do not necessarily see Charlottesville and Albemarle as their only economic center. You look at Louisa, Richmond, Charlottesville, they're going to Fredericksburg and Nelson, they're going down to Augusta, Amherst, So it's also really important that we're thinking about centering all of our planning. It's not centering everybody's coming here. It's how do we make the entire area have good connection systems. So I think in CARTA, we can't only think about how do we get the people from the surrounding counties into the city. We have to think about what about the residents in those counties that are not coming into the city, and where are we providing transit and where are we not, because it's outside of the
and the first view of people in this area going outside. 35,000 coming in.
I think that's why the travel demand model that reach. That's a big thing. Like we have to understand that and get behind what that model is saying. Also, because I mean that kind of helps us with the planning piece of all.
Awesome. I am going to, we're going to have to cut out the roundtable. My apologies. Are there any additional matters from the public today? Online? Can't see online, so whoever can see it. And I want to thank Sean, your team, Chuck, Stacy, everybody, right? We didn't get into it today. We didn't have. I hope this was worthy of your time, Mr. Byers, from what you both learned, but hearing reaction and what we had to say about these things. And I think it's a good, probably first step that we aren't strangers to one another, continue to talk about these transportation priority lists, not just individual projects and what we're working with and the reality of it, but then also bigger scheme things like how things are funded in this state. So thank you for your time, especially. All right. Is Christine Taylor, am I missing anything?
No.
All right. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I thank everybody for their time today. And do apologize again that we're going to cut the roundtable out, but I think we'll enjoy getting their time back. Their time today. All right, we will be adjourned to April 22nd, 2026 at 4 p.m. And that is a virtual meeting that is so thank you all.